The final top 50 big board is here, and with it, a defensive line class that could reshape the NFL.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Damian Parson. That's Keith Sanchez. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 back in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode, we're breaking down our final top 50 big board, giving you our key takeaways, looking at the offensive line on today and talk about some of the prospects and why we might see a run on night one. We're going to talk about some of the linebackers in this class and how good of a linebacker class it is. But we're going to start the show, Keith, with the defensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, let's look at those defensive linemen, Keith. And, of course, you know, when you think about D-line, we know about, like, we talk about Kayden McDonald and how much we love what he brings to the table. And everything like that, Keith. But I want to go to Christien Miller. We got him at number 36 on our top 50 big board, defensive lineman out of Georgia. I think he came out with like 6'3", 315, 320-ish, and everything at the combine, Keith. I like this dude. And I feel like he's not talked about a lot, which is wild because he's a Georgia Bulldog and on the defensive side of the ball and on the D-line at that. Like, we know that typically Georgia's guys typically translate well to the league. They might not be the most refined technically coming out of Georgia, but they typically are, because I think half the battle is being able to handle the power, the strength, the physicality in the trenches at the next level. Georgia guys are typically well prepared for that. Unlike some other schools, they're well prepared to fight in the trenches. Keith, what's your thoughts on Christien Miller?
Yeah, I think that part that translate DP is the technically sound part, right? And it seems as though, you know, Georgia with that factory, right? Like, it's about technique first, you know, the lock, peak, and shed technique, right? Like they do a good job of gap control and things like that. And I think they have to develop physically before they can get on the field, right? And understand how to control other grown men that's in the SEC. How I feel about Christien Miller, DP, I think he's going to be your prototype run-stopping defensive tackle. I think partial of it, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I felt as though watching the film, and this may be why he doesn't get discussed at a high level, I thought that he was a part of a rotation, right? Like a heavy rotation. We always talk about that with Georgia, right? They stay rotating guys in and out. And I think that may have took away from some of his production, but also it may have just skewed people's perspective a little bit, right? Like, this guy is rotated in and out a lot, but I think he's your I won't say prototype, but he's your plug and play defensive tackle, right? He play. I think he can play in either scheme. I think he plays zero tech. I think he can play shade. I think he can play a little 3. He can play some 2, right? Just line them up in the interior gaps and do some different things. I like him. I think he's heavy-handed. I think he's physical. I think he's a guy that you will want to have take on those double teams. So we know the Buffalo Bills, right? And I even think on our large mock draft that we did across the entire network, right, with all 32 NFL teams, that Joe Marino, the Locked On Buffalo Bills host, he plugged Christien Miller into that slot, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And it makes sense, right? They need a big body defensive tackle to eat up some blockers, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do.
I want to actually keep, like, because I agree with everything you said. I love the run defense. I love the physicality he plays with. Do you see any, you know, like how we talk about with like Kayden McDonald, right? Kayden McDonald being as big as he is, it's like, man, you see him and you see the potential for him to be a 3-down like defensive line. Like, he doesn't have, long as his weight and everything is fine, skill wise, you could see him playing 3 downs and be able to collapse the pocket. Do you think teams could get that out of Christien Miller, or is he just one of those guys that he's gonna be really great against the run, but you might want to sub him out when it comes down to pass rush situations?
Man, I'm actually kind of split on that, DP, and I think that's the lack of reps parts is because he didn't get a whole lot of reps, right? So I don't want to necessarily project it and say, yeah, he could for sure do it, because the athleticism, I would say, is solid, right? Like, I didn't feel like he was an elite, twitchy athlete. Like, I didn't think that he was on the Jalen Carter level of the movement skills and functional athleticism, right? I didn't think that. What I would it would be in the back of my mind if I would have to, right? Rotate him in and out. I don't think it'll be due to a him being fatigued type of thing, or me thinking that he has bad weight on him or he's overweight. I think it's more so just not knowing. And first I would try it out in training camp, see how much he offers as a pass rusher. And then if not, then just sub him out, right? But there's nothing wrong with that. You're talking about obvious passing downs, right? And then how many times are you in obvious passing down situations, right? Like that's usually third downs, but what if the team is at third and that's not obviously going to be a pass, right? So there's different ways to go about this. So I think it's a test case. I think it's a test case. You have to draft them and then test them out and see how you feel about it.
No, I agree with you on that, and I do think that there's potential and there's upside there with him as a potential pass rusher. I think I like I like his movement skills. I love his power and his strength and everything. I definitely think this is a guy that teams kind of look at him and say, you know, what can we do with him? Can we play him at, you know, if you like, for example, I think, you know, you think about a team that has say they have a big nose tackle. Could you play him at 3-tech in the even front? I say, yeah, I'll play him at that 2-wide 3-tech with a big nose tackle because I know that you're not going to have any success running between the middle of our defensive line, right? So
that's the thing. You know, I think he can get kicked out. I agree.
Yeah, 100%. I want to talk about you know, guy that you had really high early on, and I feel like now his stock dropped, and then now it's like picking back up. Keldric Faulk out of Auburn, Keith, and I think from you know, and I'm comfortable with him. He came in I think 25th. He came in, you know, on our top 25. He's number 25 on our big board. I think, and I've said this, I would utilize him because he gives you that positional flexibility, right? Being able to play 3-tech. I think he's strong enough to play that 2-eye spot. He can play 5, and you know that odd front defensive end. I think he gives you a lot of that versatility. I think the reason why I'm able to because I view him differently. I feel like the consensus does, Keith. I think the consensus views him as as an edge. I view him as a defensive lineman, Keith. Like I want to put him, especially on third downs. I don't want him rushing head up on tackles or outside shaded tackles. I don't view him as a guy that's going to be able to corner well against NFL tackles, and his main game is speed. Power, and against NFL tackles, like they're strong too. You got to be able to give them both, and not just give them straight power. But I think interior wise, lining him up against guards, getting them to split into gaps and get between the guard and the center, I think you get the best return on your investment with Keldric Faulk in that situation.
Yeah, no, I think I'm right there with you, DP. It's to me, I hate to kind of invoke this conversation, but remember with Tyree Wilson and people fell in love with the measurables, and it was still a conversation of like, okay, well, how often does he get back to the quarterback, right? And when you watch the true pass rush reps on the outside, like, can I bet on this guy being a consistent double-digit sack guy, right? It's him. I think it's Cleveland Farrell, right? Like guys that that lack that kind of transition when you're talking about the first step explosiveness and then continuing to get faster, right? Like and there was and I think I've said it on this podcast before, right? Like there's a phrase in scouting where they say like a same speed player, where there's no burst, there's no closing speed. And I think that part may impact Keldric, but you're talking about battling in the trenches. He's ready for that, right? So I think it's about, and I'm not sure, DP, you can pull the numbers up, exactly what he weighed in at the combine, but if you can get him to that 270 mark, right, like 265, 270, then I'm right there with you. There's a path to kick him inside because I think from the brute toughness and physicality, the mentality part of that, he has that, right? And you see that at Auburn. And I think if there's going to be a path for him to be disruptive consistently, it's going to be him slanting and twisting and shooting gaps and things like that to be disruptive and get in the backfield.
Yeah, at the combine, he came in 6'5", 7/8, 276 pounds. He had 34 3/8 on the arm.
276.
Yeah, 276.
Yeah, so that's I think that's plenty big enough, right? And if he's 276, is can you push it to get him to 280, right? 280, 285, and be in a really good position.
And he's like 20 years old, so I think that he hasn't fully, as we always say, hit the grown man body yet. I think he has a frame, Keith, and you tell me. I think he has a frame that you can add some weight to him. Good weight, of course. Add more muscle to his frame. He's already strong as an ox as it is. So I definitely think that there's potential to add more to his frame and everything and go from there, right? I think this is a guy that like I said, I think the pass rush ability is there from the interior, but he's going to butter that bread as a run defender overall. I think he's going to be a really good run defender, especially from the interior.
How much did you watch Deatrich Wise out of?
Oh, a lot. I watched Deatrich Wise a lot. I remember liking Deatrich Wise, and because he went to the Patriots, and he was I kind of see where you're going. He's that versatile alignment guy. Depending on what type of offensive line you're facing, they moved him around to kind of create some advantageous opportunities for him, and he was a good player for a while.
Yeah, and that's where I'm you get what I'm saying? Like I'm trending in that direction, is that allow him to line up in multiple different positions along the defensive front and be able to create some different and maybe he's a matchup guy, right? That you put in situations where you can match up against some interior offensive alignment that you think he could take advantage of. But DP, let's do this, man. We talk the trenches, right? We talk defensive alignment, but let's flip sides of the football. Let's talk some offensive alignment, because even last time I think when we dropped our top 50 board, we didn't go in depth about a couple of these offensive linemen, the Kayden Proctor, the Monroe Freeling. You see these guys drafted everywhere from top 10 to potentially falling all the way to the second round. So let's discuss why we have them in the slots that we have them at in our top 50. Let's talk about that coming up next.
Spring is a natural reset point. And if there's one thing that can quietly cost businesses money, it's messy communications. Missed calls, scattered texts, and no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O. The smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. The part I love, everything lives in one clean thread. Calls, texts, and voicemails. It just makes your business feel more organized and more responsive. So make this the season. No opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnfl. That's QUO.com/lockedonnfl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. You know that feeling around dinner time when you're starving, maybe a little hangry, and somehow there's nothing in your fridge? That's why Home Chef is the easiest way to have real, balanced meals ready to go without the stress. Home Chef makes cooking simple. You get fresh ingredients delivered to your front door, easy to follow recipes, and meals that actually taste great. No long shopping lists, no complicated prep, and best of all, easy cleanup. What I love most is how flexible it is. Some nights, I've got time for a full 30-minute meal. Other nights, I just want something oven ready or quick. They've got options for it all. And guys, for a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off and free shipping on your first box, plus free dessert for life. Go to homechef.com/lockedonnfl. That's homechef.com/lockedonnfl for 50% off your first box and free desserts for life. homechef.com/lockedonnfl. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Don't forget to check out the Everyday Club for ad-free episodes and access to our group chat via Discord with me, Keith, and other listeners of the show. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonnfldraft.supercast.com to join. Keith, the offensive line, and I look at this offensive line group, Keith, and I think that, and I'll say this, my bold, we're going to probably do a bold predictions show, for the drop Thursday morning. But Keith, I think honestly, the night before the draft kicks off Thursday, I think we get a run offensive lineman. And right now, when you look at where the offensive linemen are ranked on our big board inside the top 25, Keith, I mean, we got our highest guy, Venga Ione. We got Spencer Fano, Francis CC Maui Noah. They talked about a back issue that, it's weird. The wording of it is odd. It's like, a little concerning, but shouldn't be too much concerning. And I'm like, that's concerning. You know what I mean?
It's either concerning or it's not.
Right. It's either concerning or it's not. So, yeah, guys, like, you kind of throw me off there. But we got Kadyn Proctor out of Alabama at 21, Monroe Freeling at 22 out of Georgia, right? You go into, a little bit further down, we got Max Iheanachor at 28, okay? We got Caleb Lomu out of Utah at 32. We have Blake Miller out of Clemson at 38, Emmanuel Pregnon at 39, You know what I mean? Like this is a really good offensive line group, in my opinion, from tackle to guard. Some tackles could play guard, some guards can play center, some tackles like Spencer Fano, Mike can play all 5 positions, Keith. But Monroe Freeling is one of the more polarizing ones because I've seen him go mocked as high as 6 to the Browns because they need a left tackle. And then I've seen him mocked as low as, I think, 17 to the Detroit Lions. So his draft stock is definitely top 25 for sure right now.
Yeah, and it's somewhat the same thing with Kadyn Proctor too, right? Like you see him go as high as, like you said, 5, 6, and then honestly, with Kayden is as low as 25, right?
Yeah,
he can go in multiple different positions. But talking about Monroe Freeling, because I don't think we've truly discussed him or had the conversation. We had him at 22, I believe, right? He came in at 22 for us. Yeah, 22. And so I look at it and I think that's probably somewhere around the perfect balance. I think when you compare it to mock drafts, why he elevates is because he's one of the true only pure left tackles, right? And so because obviously both tackle positions are valuable, right? But I think there's still this kind of underlying trend or underlying feeling that the left tackle is still a premier tackle, right? And I think that he plays the quote unquote premier position, and it's not a lot of them, right? The guys that are ranked towards the top, they're both right tackles. And even Max Iheanachor is a right tackle, right? So you Max, you got Spencer Fano, you got Francis Muagawa, like all of those guys are right tackles. And Monroe kind of stands alone, him and Kadyn Proctor, because they're true left tackles. So I think Monroe, if I had to compare the two, right? I think Kayden probably offers you more in the run game now, right? Obviously, him being 350, 60, 70, 80 pounds, just a big old boy. But Monroe probably has the more natural movement skills, in my opinion, of the two.
And I think that's why his stock is as high as it is right now. Because like you said, I mean, heck, if you talking about just pure, like just actual real left tackles that people like in this class, it's Freeling, Proctor, and Lomu. And Lomu's on the back end of that. Like his stock
probably more of a second round. In my opinion, I got more of a second
late
round.
First into the second round for him because he's kind of raw, I think, technically and everything. Where for me with Freeland, 6'7", 315, just an athletic and easy mover, lateral movement ability. You're talking about handling and passing off twists and stunts. That's there and easy for him. You want to see him get better in the run game, get stronger at the point of attack, be able to move some bodies, but he's functional, right? Can he? I always say, like, I kind of usually say with tight ends, can you set a screen? You know what I mean? Can you seal and set the screen? And if you could do that, a good running back can take advantage of that. But old line coaches are going to want to pull more dog out of him, no pun intended, with him being a bulldog, pull more dog out of him in the run game. But he's just, I think, a one-year true starter. So like, there's a little bit of greenness to him, to where it's like, I think, because, for example, like I have like Panther fans that want him. And I'm like, I don't know, going into such a pivotal year for Bryce Young and this offense and the coaching staff, yes, you backdoor your way into the playoffs, but you want to try and win the actual division and have a winning record for once since you drafted them, and you want him to take that step forward. If you bring in Monroe Freeling, is he ready to be the true blindside protector for a smaller quarterback who needs the protection to feel comfortable to play his game? I'm like, your brother Rasheed Walker, let the vet do his thing. I don't want to draft a developmental guy at 19. I want to get a instant playmaker, whether offensively or defensively, at 19. But then you see the Browns, right? The same thing with the Browns. Like, hey, the Browns need a left tackle. They did a lot of work on the offensive line with Elton Jenkins. I think Tevin Jenkins is supposed to be the right guard, so they could upgrade that spot. They brought in Zion Johnson to play left guard, and then they traded for Titus Howard. They pretty much reworked that entire offensive line. They just need the left tackle. They got DeJuan Jones, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I get why you would want Monroe Freeling, and I think that's going to be that's why I think his stock is as high as 6, because the Browns are in the situation, Keith, with pick 6 and 24, where they're saying to themselves, do we take the receiver early and hope and pray there's a left tackle at 24 worthy of drafting, or do we take our guy early and know that this is a deep wide receiver class and we can get an Omar Cooper Jr., we can get a Chris Bell and double down on round 2 and get another receiver? Like, do we go O-line early? And I think that might be the the best option. But I love the upside of Monroe Freeling, Keith. And I think Max Iheanachor, do you think that's a guy that a team that needs a left tackle? Do you think he should be a guy that's on their board and flipping him? Because you know how we talked about going from right with your right to your left hand. Do you think he's a guy that could actually flip to the left side?
Oh man, that's a good question because especially when, and I mean, and it's a moot point now, but remember when there were conversations about Trent Williams, right? When there was a contract disputes, there's a couple of times I mocked Trent Williams, Max Iheanachor to the San Francisco 49ers for that purpose. Obviously, they figured it out, right? But I thought that I had that thought process when moving, Max to the left side and like, can he do it? I'm a bet on that he can, just because of the athleticism and the movement skills. But if he, and this is the thing, right? If he was a left tackle, I think his value would obviously be much more immense, and he would be a guy I think we could see potentially mocked in the top 10. He's one of my sleeper guys that I wouldn't be surprised, like almost like last year when Amon Mimbu kind of like shot up the draft charts late, and then he wound up being a top 10. I think top 10 to the New York Jets.
Top 10, yeah.
I can see that with Max, right? And Amon was a right tackle. So I can see that with Max because I think he has a lot of the intangibles that NFL personnel, general managers, honestly coaches, that are going to like as far as development. What you got?
I want to bring up Blake Miller real quick. I want our Locked On listeners to understand that's another guy who has not volatile in a bad way, but just like he came in at what 30, I think 30, wrong one.
38, I think. 38.
Yes, 38. He came in at 38 for us. Keith, I've seen his name linked as high as 17 to the Detroit Lions because of that whole Penei Sewell thing of potentially swinging him to left. And it's like, for the Lions, I think that makes a ton of sense because, like, okay, if I move, because Penei Sewell was a natural left tackle anyway, right? You just put him at right because you had Taylor Decker for so long. You put Penei back. If you're going to move Penei, like Dan Campbell talked about, if he's willing to move him to the left, why not draft a true right tackle that could come in? And I think he's a plug-and-play starter for a team. 54 consecutive starts. Like, I think he's a plug-and-play guy.
Yeah, and if I'm Ryan Poles, it's something I consider also. With the Chicago Bears, Darnell Wright played multiple positions.
They just picked up his fifth-year option, too.
Yeah, and you just picked it up. He played both left and right. I would kick him to the left side. Like, listen, big boy, you got, the baptism by fire. You've been in the league quite a few years. We're committed to you. Let's kick you over to the left side and then draft. Now you have the opportunity to draft one of these right tackles, one of these rookies, right? Like you said, the Blake Millers, the Max Iheanachors, and then now you have solid tackles across the front, right? You like your left tackle, your right tackle. You like both of those situations moving forward. That would be another team that if I was that general manager, I would consider that movement, flipping the left tackle, like you were saying with Penei Sewell. DP, let's do this. Let's continue this conversation, right? And I want to talk about linebackers because that's a very underrated position in this group. And I think there's quite a few Pro Bowl caliber linebackers that's sitting in this draft class that we should discuss. Let's talk about that coming up next.
The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 back in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Guys, you can head over to FanDuel.com today to get started and test out their website and look up the current lines and odds for your teams or the best matchups for you. Again, head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network, number one sports podcast network in America. It's all because of you. Again, guys, it's NFL Draft Week. It's our top 50, our final top 50 big board reveal. And we've been, through the trenches, D-line, O-line. And Keith, let's talk some linebackers here. And we have a linebacker inside our top 25. That's CJ Allen out of Georgia. But Keith, after that, we got a couple other linebackers inside our top 50. Jacob Rodriguez coming in at 43 out of Texas Tech. Jake Golday for Cincinnati at 45. Anthony Hill Jr. also coming in at 46 out of Texas, Keith. But I know you wanted to talk about Jake Golday. Let's talk about Jake Golday because this is a guy, Keith, I mean, I think he can come off the board top of second round. You know what I mean? Like he's athletic, he's physical, he's got the size and the body type, but also he's versatile in how Cincinnati utilized him in their defensive front. You see him at overhang. He rushed the passer as a true stand-up rusher. He blitzed through the A gap if they put him at stack backer. He did a lot for that defense.
Yeah, he pushes you to ask yourself the question of, is he a top 32 player, right? Like, and projecting him top of the second round, this goes to the whole positional value thing. If this was a wide receiver or running back offensive lineman, would we be projecting him in the first round? Like, as far as just his scale of talent, right? And I think there's a chance, like, because I agree with you. There's when I really set eyes on him and evaluated him, like, I like this guy a lot. He reminded me of my guy from a few years ago, DP. Peyton Wilson. Remember Peyton Wilson had the knee injury, and I was like, listen, I really like this guy. If he's missing an ACL, somebody just find him an ACL, right? Let's just get him an ACL and figure it out.
I do recall that. I do recall that exact same statement.
But I like Jake, and you still look at the back end of the first round as, you know, some of those teams, and he's another one of those players who I think is going to be interesting to see who chases the positions versus who chases the talent, right? Who's just like, you know what, like I always say, and I feel like this, but I think in this draft more than any other draft, y'all should be looking like this. Throw the positional value chart out the window. And, you know, I've been saying that since I've started this podcast. You know, we started this podcast together. Throw it out the window. It's going to get you in trouble, especially in this draft. It will get you in trouble.
If
so
you choose not to draft good players because you're too worried about the positional value of it all, you probably gonna miss out on some good, you know, like just not the go on a tangent, but to your point, Keith, I think I was watching NFL good, like what's this show, NFL Network? Good Morning Football.
Something like that.
Yeah, Good Morning Football. And they were talking about the Titans. It's probably like a week or two ago, because I just had it on while I was doing reports. And I think it's like Willie Colon, I think it was his name, the former offensive lineman was on there. And he was like, the Titans at 4 shouldn't draft Jeremiah Love. They should draft the center. And I was like, So in the offensive line class, he's like, center or guard is what he said they should draft at 3. And I was like, listen, I'm all for getting your guys. I'm not doing that. I'm not drafting a center at 3 unless you tell me we got Tyler Linderbaum, Peter Skoronski type guys. Sure, I'm all, I'll do it. But in this class, no, absolutely not. No, I'm not doing that. I'm taking the best player available on the board, and if that's the running back, I'm taking the running back. I know I've had these conversations with a lot of people on Twitter, like, man, well, you know, how many running backs have really like lifted their team to the playoffs? I'm like, how many quarterbacks have done it without you putting the right talent around them?
No, like, you can make the same exact conversation. There are a lot of quarterbacks that went top 10 that have played bad. That it just didn't work out, right? Like,
they failed.
Yeah, and you can make at least the running backs, right? At least they usually, when we talking about first round running backs, most times you get the production that matched in college, right? Like if they were top running backs in college, they hit the ground running in the NFL, and you immediately upgrade that position. That's not always the case with positions like quarterbacks, right? They usually play significantly worse, and there's a learning curve, and then some of them never get better. Yeah,
the facts. That's a fact. But like to your point with Jake Golday, I'm drafting them, like I said, and I thought another name that came to my mind, Keith, because you threw out Peyton Wilson. I thought about Drew Sanders. Remember, he came coming out of Arkansas because Drew was that kind of stack backer who could also rush off the edge. It's just the fact that his career got derailed immediately by injuries, like significant injuries in Denver, because we were expecting them to utilize him in that way that they used Baron Browning and everything, who's with the Arizona Cardinals and everything. But CJ Allen, I don't care what it's like, the pro day videos, I'm drafting top 32 if I need that's a football player. I'm getting a really good football player who, again, if you trust the film, you see a guy who could cover, who gets to his spots, who's instinctive, who's physical, who's violent. Keith, remember my comp from the summer when we talked about him? I said he reminds me of Roquan Smith, Hey, that's all I'm gonna tell you. Like Roquan went top 10, guys. I just want you to remember he went top 10. We ain't had none of those discussions about his athleticism. But Keith, let's talk about wide receiver. I feel, man, we got a decent amount of wide receivers in our top 50 to close this show out. Basically, to kind of showcase how we feel about this receiver class. We got Jordyn Tyson at I'm gonna pull it up for those watching on YouTube, Keith. We at number 9, we got Jordyn Tyson as our wide receiver 1. Carnell Tate at 12 is our 2. We got Casey Concepcion, Makai Lemon at 14 and 15. Denzel Boston comes in at 23. Then you jump to 26. We got Omar Cooper Jr., right? Then you go to 37. We get Chris Bell, who we talked about, earlier this week, Keith. Then you get Chris Brazel at 44. And then we close it out with Ted Hurst. I had to sneak Ted Hurst in there, Keith, at 48 out of Georgia State. Guys, and I think, again, do I believe that the Dolphins should just be gung-ho about passing up on one of the top receivers, like the proven guys at 11? Mm-hmm. No, I don't think that they should be just gung-ho about that. But I understand the thought process because when you look at this receiver class, it's loaded. It's deep. You got 2s and 3s. You got guys who are 2s that have number 1 potential, like a Ted Hurst. We talk about with Malachi Fields and stuff like that. You got the guys who can come in as slot receivers who could end up, if you use them properly, kind of how Todd Monken used Zay Flowers, you can get a wide receiver 1 out of it, like a Zachariah Branch or Deion Burks and those type of guys. You need your speed guys. Brennan Thompson from Mississippi State comes in as that designated deep threat for you who could take the top off the defense. This wide receiver class is loaded, and I definitely think, teams that I personally feel like even if you got your top 2 guys, draft one out of this class still. I don't think any team that, if you don't have 4 guys you feel really good about, draft one. I don't care. You know what I mean? If they got special teams value, cool. I'll let you be my punt and kick returner early on, and then I'll phase you into the offense as we phase this guy out and let him go get a bag somewhere else in free agency.
Yeah, I agree, DP, and I think we did this appropriately just because that's where the talent is, right? And we said this probably since November. We like, wait, there's a lot of wide receivers in this class. Yeah, and I mean, and that's still leaving out the 2 Texas Tech wide receivers. I know Reggie Virgil didn't run a fast 40 time. He is one guy where in person,
I got him as a 3rd, man. I still have him as a 3rd.
Yeah, I like in person. That didn't look like a 4.6 because he was running past DBs and 101s. And so
he's crafty. He knows how to win.
Yep, I'm still in on him. So I agree with that, DP. But listen, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's show, I feel like we should drop, Keith, I thought about it. We need to do a predictive mock. Well, how we think round 1 of the 2026 NFL draft should go or could go, Keith, because tomorrow is draft day.
It's here. Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Here. Like let's get it done. So I think that we should do it like that, Keith, and drop that on tomorrow morning. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team